Stand still, you piece of trash. I want to see if mud stains gold when it's wrapped in designer silk. Jasper Sterling IV sneered, his voice dripping with the kind of venom that only generational wealth can breed, as he held the magnum of vintage champagne over Valerie Thorne's head. The 16-year-old's cruel grin stretched wide, distorting his youthful face into a mask of malice as the sticky golden liquid crashed down onto her face, dripping onto her bespoke gown, while the room full of billionaires sucked in their breath. Cynthia Sterling clapped her hands together like he had just performed a concerto. "Good boy, Jasper. She fits the part now, doesn't she?" she crowed, lifting her diamond-encrusted phone to film the humiliation. Richard Sterling approached, his eyes cold and dead like a shark's. "Try not to ruin the Persian rugs," he murmured to Valerie. "These galas weren't designed for your kind anyway." Valerie didn't move, and none of them understood they had just drenched the one woman capable of collapsing their entire dynasty with a single decision. Before we continue with this shocking tale of revenge and justice, comment down below where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely cannot miss. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm, honeyed glow across the hand-laid mosaic floors of the Sterling Legacy Foundation's grand ballroom in downtown Manhattan. Hundreds of guests in tuxedos and haute couture gowns turned as Valerie Thorne made her entrance, her midnight blue silk gown catching the light like a deep ocean wave. She moved with the confident grace that had become her trademark in the cutthroat world of pharmaceuticals, acknowledging the scattered applause with a practiced, serene smile. At 44, Valerie commanded attention not through volume or flash, but through a terrifyingly calm presence. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant architectural updo, offsetting emerald drop earrings that caught the light with every turn of her head. She had built Helix Biocorp from a basement startup into a global medical powerhouse, and tonight was meant to honor that achievement. Ms. Thorne, several business associates stepped forward to greet her, their voices full of deferential respect. But before she could respond, a commotion rippled through the crowd like a stone dropped in a pond. Jasper Sterling IV shouldered his way through the gathered guests, the heavy crystal champagne bottle in his hand. His prep school blazer was deliberately untucked, his tie loose, a calculated display of teenage rebellion that reeked of privilege and the certainty that consequences were for other people. A few of his private school sycophants trailed behind him, phones already raised like weapons. Valerie noticed his approach, but maintained her composure. Years of boardroom battles and hostile takeovers had taught her to read threatening body language instantly. The boy's smirk told her everything she needed to know about what was coming. "Welcome to the real party," Jasper drawled, rocking back on his heels. His voice cracked with adolescent uncertainty, but his eyes gleamed with a malice far beyond his 16 years. Before Valerie could respond, Jasper's arm shot forward. The champagne arched through the air in slow motion, splashing across her face and chest. The expensive blue silk instantly transformed into a dark, heavy stain. Droplets ran down her neck and arms, pattering onto the mosaic floor like rain. Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. Phones appeared from every direction, recording her humiliation. But it was the laughter that cut deepest. Richard and Cynthia Sterling's distinctive cackles rising above the crowd's shock. "Oh, Jasper!" Cynthia called out between giggles, her phone steady as she filmed the liquid dripping off Valerie's chin. "You are absolutely terrible." But her tone carried pride rather than reprimand. Richard's deep chuckle joined his wife's. "Boys will be boys," he announced to their social circle already spinning the narrative. "Just a bit of hazing for the newcomer." Valerie stood perfectly still, feeling the sticky alcohol seep into her clothes, her skin, her $500 makeup. but decades of being the only black woman in rooms full of hostile white faces had taught her absolute control. Her face remained neutral, almost serene, as she reached for a napkin offered by a horrified waiter. "What's wrong?" Jasper taunted, high on his assumed immunity. "Cat got your tongue, or do you not speak unless spoken to?" Valerie dabbed at her neck with deliberate calm. The silence stretched, making Jasper's smirk waver just slightly. She knew this moment would define everything that followed, so she chose her reaction with surgical precision. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying in the tense quiet. "You have just clarified my final decision regarding the merger." Confusion flickered across Jasper's face. He had expected tears, anger, a scene he could twist to paint her as unstable. Instead, she moved past him with measured steps, heading for the stage where she was meant to deliver her keynote address regarding the acquisition of Sterling Pharma. Champagne dripped from her arms onto the stairs as she ascended. The spotlights felt hotter than usual, highlighting every stain, every drop. But Valerie's spine remained straight as steel as she took her place behind the podium. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and clear. Hundreds of eyes locked onto her phones, still recording. "I had prepared remarks about partnership progress and a shared vision for the future of medicine. But recent events require a different message." In the crowd, Richard Sterling's smile began to fade as he realized this wasn't following his expected script. Effective immediately, Valerie continued, "Helix Biocorp is terminating all negotiations regarding the proposed $800 million strategic acquisition of Sterling Pharma." The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Richard's face turned an ugly shade of red. Cynthia's phone lowered slowly as the implications sank in. "Our company values include integrity, respect, and dignity for all," Valerie stated, each word precise and cutting. "We choose our partners based on demonstrated alignment with these principles. Tonight has made it abundantly clear that this alignment does not exist." She could see Richard starting to push through the crowd, his face contorted with rage veins bulging in his neck. But she wasn't finished. To quote someone in this room, "Boys will be boys, and companies will be companies. We all make our choices, and we all live with the consequences." Her eyes found Jasper in the crowd, his earlier bravado replaced by growing uncertainty as his father glared at him. "I choose to walk away from toxicity no matter how profitable the alternative might be." The silence in the ballroom was absolute now. Even the servers had stopped moving, trapped in the gravity of the moment. Valerie's soaked gown continued to drip onto the stage, each drop echoing like a gavel fall. "I wish you all a lovely evening," she concluded, stepping back from the podium. She moved toward the stairs, with the same measured grace she had shown all evening, leaving the Sterlings to face the sea of cameras now turned their way. The carefully maintained facade of the family's social dominance cracked visibly as smartphones lit up with breaking news alerts. In an instant, their son's prank had cost them a deal their failing company desperately needed. The empire built on generations of privilege had just been shaken by a woman who refused to play victim to their games. The click of Valerie's heels echoed across the stage as she descended the stairs, her composure intact, despite the sticky wine still dripping from her ruined gown. The ballroom had erupted into a storm of whispers and frantically typing fingers. Phones tracked her every move, their artificial glow creating a constellation of light throughout the dimmed room. Ms. Thorne reporters who had been covering the gala social pages now shouted questions with renewed urgency. But Valerie maintained her steady pace toward the exit, neither hurrying nor hesitating. Richard Sterling's voice boomed across the room. "This is ridiculous, complete overreaction." He was already on his phone, red-faced and gesturing wildly. "Get me the legal team now." Jasper stood frozen where Valerie had left him. the empty champagne bottle still dangling from his fingers. His previous smugness had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that his actions had consequences beyond his father's laughter. "Delete those videos. All of you delete them right now." Cynthia Sterling's shrill command cut through the chaos as she noticed dozens of guests uploading footage. But it was already too late. Marcus Cole burst through the lobby doors, his tablet clutched in his hands. As Helix Biocorp's crisis manager, he had been monitoring social media feeds from the press room. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, tie askew, dark hair falling across his forehead. "Valerie?" He rushed to her side, falling into step as she continued toward the exit. "It is everywhere. The livestream has over 2 million views already, and it is climbing by the second." She nodded, unsurprised. "Show me." Marcus held up his tablet, scrolling through a tornado of notifications. Comments flooded in faster than the screen could refresh. Disgusting behavior from the Sterling brat. Who raises a kid to think this is okay? That calm reaction, though, she is a queen. Time to investigate the Sterling's history. Twitter is exploding. Marcus reported, his fingers flying across the screen. Major news outlets are picking up the story. CNN, MSNBC, Fox. They are all running with it. The clip of you announcing the deal cancellation is trending even faster than the champagne incident. They reached the lobby where the gala's coat check staff scrambled to assist her despite their obvious shock at her appearance. One young attendant, a black woman barely out of her teens, handed Valerie her wrap with tears in her eyes. "You showed them, Miss Thorne," she whispered. "You showed them we don't have to take it anymore." Valerie squeezed the young woman's hand briefly before continuing toward the exit. Outside camera flashes exploded like lightning as journalists swarmed the steps of the venue. Ms. Thorne, was this a racially motivated attack? Will Helix pursue legal action against the Sterlings? What message do you have for other executives facing discrimination? Marcus stepped forward, shielding Valerie as her driver pulled up in the black SUV. "Ms. Thorne will release a formal statement tomorrow. No further comments tonight." Through the tinted windows, Valerie watched the chaos recede as they pulled away from the curb. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members, industry colleagues, and journalists. She silenced it finally, allowing herself to feel the weight of the evening. The Sterling stock is already dropping in after-hours trading, Marcus reported from the seat beside her, still monitoring the fallout. Their Asian markets opened 20 minutes ago, and it is not pretty. Richard is trying to spin it as a tantrum on your part, but nobody is buying it. The video speaks for itself. "Their PR team will push back hard tomorrow," Valerie said, watching the city lights blur past. "Have our legal department ready. Richard won't take this lying down. Already on it." But Valerie Marcus hesitated. "This is bigger than a canceled deal now. The public response people are seeing this as a watershed moment. You are becoming a symbol." She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the dried champagne pull at her skin. "I never wanted to be a symbol, Marcus. I just wanted to run my company without dealing with their entitled garbage." The car pulled into her building's private garage, where the security team had already doubled their presence in anticipation of paparazzi. The private elevator whisked her to her penthouse apartment, where she finally allowed her shoulders to drop slightly. "Get some rest," Marcus advised, checking his phone one last time. "Tomorrow is going to be intense. I will have a full media strategy ready by 7 a.m. Alone in her apartment, Valerie finally peeled off the ruined gown, letting it pool on the marble floor of her bathroom. The hot shower washed away the champagne, but couldn't erase the memory of those mocking laughs, the entitled sneer on Jasper's face, the dozens of phones recording her humiliation. She had just wrapped herself in a silk robe when her phone lit up with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Ms. Thorne, my name is Martha Higgins. I worked for the Sterling family for 30 years as their head housekeeper and nanny. What happened to you tonight was not an isolated incident. I have documents, recordings, and evidence of things they have done that would destroy them completely. Things they have paid millions to keep hidden. I am ready to share everything. Please meet with me. It is time someone finally held them accountable." Valerie read the message twice, noting the precise language and formal tone. This wasn't a crank message from an internet troll. Her instincts, honed by years of corporate warfare, told her this was genuine. She typed a response. "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., my office at Helix Tower. Tell security you are here for a private meeting with me." Martha's reply came immediately. "I will be there. Thank you for standing up to them tonight. You are not alone in this fight anymore." Valerie placed her phone on the nightstand, mind already mapping out scenarios and strategies. Whatever evidence Martha held, it was clear this battle with the Sterlings was about to enter an entirely new phase. Valerie arrived early at the Helix Tower, using a side entrance to avoid the cameras already camped out front. She chose a secluded conference room, away from the main glass walls. At precisely 8 a.m., Martha Higgins entered. Despite her 70 years, she moved with purposeful dignity, her silver hair neatly styled, and her clothing pressed to perfection, habits ingrained from decades of service. The weathered leather satchel she carried looked heavy against her slight frame. Valerie stood to greet her, noting the straight spine and clear eyes that suggested a woman used to bearing witness. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Higgins. Martha, please." Her voice was soft but steady as she settled into the chair. "After what I saw last night, I couldn't stay silent anymore." That boy, she shook her head just like his father at that age. Same cruel smile, same certainty that rules don't apply. Martha placed the satchel on the table between them, her hands resting protectively on its worn surface. "I started keeping records my first week there." Martha began unclasping the bag. The way they spoke to staff, especially people of color, I knew I needed proof. Nobody would believe it otherwise. She withdrew a stack of leather-bound journals, their pages yellow with age. 30 years of daily logs, every racist comment, every firing without cause, every harassment complaint that got buried. Valerie opened the first journal, dated 1994. Martha's handwriting was precise, each entry marked with time, date, and location. The very first page documented Richard Sterling Sr. berating a black groundskeeper until the man quit, then laughing about saving money on severance. "They never saw me as a threat," Martha continued, removing more items from the satchel. "I was just the help invisible. They would say and do anything in front of me." She placed a small digital recorder on the table. 10 years ago, I started carrying this, the things they discussed over dinner." She pressed play. Richard Sterling's voice filled the room, discussing how to force out an Asian executive who had discovered accounting irregularities. "Plant something in his office," he had said. "Everyone knows those people can't be trusted with money anyway." Valerie's jaw tightened. "How many recordings?" "Hundreds. But that is not all." Martha produced a manila envelope stuffed with photographs. Private parties, board meetings, family gatherings, the things they would laugh about, the deals they would brag about breaking. They spent the next hour reviewing documents chronologically. Martha's meticulous organization revealed patterns of discrimination, financial manipulation, and calculated cruelty spanning generations. Photos showed Jasper's father teaching him to mock domestic staff, encouraging his worst impulses. But this, Martha said finally, withdrawing a thick folder. "This is what you need most." She spread out internal memos and financial documents. They have been embezzling from their own company for years. That deal with Helix, they needed it to cover hundreds of millions in missing funds before the next audit. Valerie studied the papers, her business training, spotting the careful manipulation of numbers. They were going to use our acquisition to hide their theft. Richard's gambling debts, Martha explained. Cynthia's shopping addiction, private jets, hidden properties, bribes to keep other scandals quiet. They have built their whole lives on other people's broken dreams. More documents emerged. Correspondence proving the Sterlings had destroyed evidence in discrimination lawsuits, forged signatures on settlements, paid off judges. Martha had photographed every page, recorded every conversation, preserved every scrap of proof. "Why now?" Valerie asked gently, "after keeping this for so long?" Martha's hands trembled slightly. "My granddaughter sent me that video last night, watching you stand there dripping with champagne while they laughed." She pressed her lips together. "I saw myself 30 years ago staying quiet while they hurt people. Staying quiet to keep my job, to protect my family. But seeing you refuse to break it woke something in me. I am too old now to fear their retaliation." Valerie reached across the table, covering Martha's weathered hands with her own. "They will try to discredit you, try to paint you as a disgruntled employee. Let them try." Martha's voice strengthened. "Every document is dated. Every photo has metadata. Every recording is time-stamped. I knew someday someone would need to expose them. I made sure everything would hold up in court." They spent several more hours reviewing the evidence. Martha's documentation was forensic in its detail. Dates, times, witnesses, consequences. She had even tracked which employees were forced out, documenting their struggles to find new jobs after the Sterlings blacklisted them. "They destroy lives for sport," Martha said, showing Valerie a photo of Jasper at age 6 throwing food at a maid while his parents applauded. "They raise their children to think cruelty is their birthright." As the morning light filled the room, Valerie finally sat back, processing the magnitude of what lay before her. This wasn't just ammunition for a corporate fight. It was evidence of decades of criminal behavior that had gone unchecked because of wealth and influence. "I will protect you," Valerie promised, meeting Martha's steady gaze. "We will do this right. Every document verified, every recording authenticated, and then we will bring it all to light. Not just for what they did to me, but for everyone they have hurt." Martha nodded, relief visible in the slight softening of her shoulders. "It is time someone showed them they are not above the law. That money can't buy them out of everything." The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Helix's glass-walled conference room as Valerie spread Martha's documents across the polished table. Marcus paced behind her, scrolling through social media reactions on his tablet. Marisol Trent, their chief legal counsel, methodically sorted the evidence into categories, her expression growing darker with each new revelation. "The scope of this is staggering," Marisol said, holding up a particularly damning financial document. "Tax fraud, embezzlement, witness tampering. They have been operating like a criminal enterprise masquerading as a corporate dynasty." Marcus paused his pacing. "The public is still solidly on our side after last night. That video hit 30 million views. Corporate watchdog groups are calling for investigations into—" His words cut off as his tablet chimed. Then Valerie's phone buzzed. Then Marisol's. "Breaking news." Marcus set his voice tight. "Richard Sterling just filed a lawsuit. They are claiming defamation and breach of contract." He looked up, face grim. "They are calling you emotionally unstable, Valerie, saying you manufactured a racial incident to void a binding agreement." Valerie stood perfectly still, watching the notifications flood her screen. Major networks were already running the story. The Sterling PR machine had mobilized with stunning speed. "They are painting me as unstable," she said quietly, picking up her phone to read the headlines, saying I have a history of volatile behavior and paranoid accusations. Her voice remained steady, but her fingers tightened around the device. Marisol grabbed the remote, turning on the conference room's wall-mounted screens. Every news channel showed Richard Sterling on the courthouse steps, looking somber in an expertly tailored suit. "Ms. Thorne's shocking behavior has forced us to take legal action," he was saying, his practiced concern almost believable. "Her unfounded accusations and erratic decision-making have already cost shareholders millions. We tried to handle this privately, but her continued instability leaves us no choice." Bastard Marcus muttered furiously, taking notes. He is trying to reframe the whole narrative. The screens split to show paid commentators debating Valerie's mental state. One suggested she had anger management issues. Another questioned whether she was truly qualified to run a major corporation. A third mentioned previous incidents without specifying any details. "They are using every racist dog whistle in the book," Marisol growled. "The angry black woman stereotype. The implications of incompetence." Her phone rang. Then Marcus's. Then Valerie's. Partners wanting explanations. Board members demanding meetings. Journalists seeking comments. "Get everyone in here." Valerie ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Full executive team now." Within 30 minutes, Helix's senior leadership filled the conference room. Some looked worried, others angry. All were fiercely loyal to Valerie. "The Sterlings just declared war," she began, standing at the head of the table. "They are betting they can bury the truth under lawsuits and character assassination. They think their money and connections make them untouchable." She gestured to Martha's evidence. "They are wrong." Chief Financial Officer James Martinez raised his hand. "We are already seeing market impact. 3 major partners have requested emergency meetings. Stock is down 12%. And dropping," added Sarah Chen, head of operations. "The uncertainty is spooking investors." Marcus projected financial models onto the screens. "We can weather a 20% drop. Anything more starts affecting project timelines." "Then we don't wait," Valerie said. "Marisol, how fast can we verify Martha's evidence? I have 3 teams working already. Initial assessment shows everything is authentic. The recordings are clean, the paper trail is solid. Give me 48 hours to have it all triple-checked." The room's energy shifted as Valerie outlined their counter-strategy. They would release the evidence, systematically building an irrefutable case. Martha would be protected. Every claim would be backed by multiple sources. "They think they can silence us with legal threats and media manipulation," Valerie continued. "But truth doesn't need spin. It just needs sunlight." Heads nodded around the table. Someone started clapping. Soon the whole room joined in. A spontaneous show of support that made Valerie's throat tight with emotion. The meeting continued past midnight. Teams coordinating responses and securing data. Security protocols were upgraded. Legal preparations accelerated. Through it all, Valerie remained focused, directing resources and adjusting strategies as new attacks emerged. Finally, close to 1 a.m., she returned to her penthouse. The city lights sparkled below her floor-to-ceiling windows, beautiful and distant. She changed into silk pajamas, trying to unwind, but her mind kept racing through scenarios and contingencies. At 2 a.m., she still lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The whir of helicopter blades cut through the night. News crews circling, hoping to catch something they could use against her. Their searchlights occasionally swept past her windows, casting strange shadows. She grabbed her phone, checking the latest updates. More attacks, more planted stories, more carefully crafted lies designed to make her look irrational and dangerous. The Sterlings were mobilizing every resource, calling in every favor, determined to destroy her before she could expose their crimes. The helicopters grew louder, their blades chopping through the darkness. Valerie watched their lights dance across her ceiling, remembering Martha's words about staying quiet in the face of injustice. But she wasn't staying quiet. She wasn't backing down. Let them circle, she thought. Let them watch. The truth was coming, and all their money couldn't stop it. Before we move to the explosive climax of this story, if you are enjoying this tale of corporate justice, hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the ending. Valerie's eyes snapped open in the dim panic room of her penthouse the next morning. Her neck ached from sleeping against the wall. The security feed still flickered on multiple screens, showing a quieter scene outside, just a few determined photographers camping in their cars. Her phone showed 5:47 a.m. She had managed barely an hour of rest, but adrenaline was already coursing through her veins. A gentle knock echoed through the reinforced door. Ms. Thorne, her head of security, called. "Mr. Cole and Ms. Higgins are here." Valerie smoothed her wrinkled clothes and checked her reflection in her phone. Even after everything, she wouldn't let them see her disheveled. "Let them in." Marcus burst through the door, first his usually pristine suit rumpled from a sleepless night. "I have been analyzing their media strategy, the timing, the platforms they chose, the specific outlets. It is too perfect. They have been planning this for weeks." Martha entered more slowly, her aged face lined with concern. She carried a thermos and a paper bag. "You need to eat something, child. Can't fight on an empty stomach." The familiar scent of Martha's homemade coffee filled the room as she poured a cup. Valerie accepted it gratefully, the warm ceramic grounding her. "Show me that video again," Valerie said, setting her cup down. "The raw file, not the broadcast version." Marcus pulled up the security footage on the main screen. They watched in silence as the grainy figure meant to be. Valerie confronted Jasper in that shadowy hallway. "Frame by frame," Valerie commanded. "Slow it down." They analyzed each moment, looking for inconsistencies. Martha took notes while Marcus marked timestamps of suspicious segments. There, Valerie suddenly pressed pause. "Look at the reflection in that door handle." They leaned closer. In the curved brass surface, a faint reflection showed the hallway. Empty, except for a cleaning cart. "Timestamp," Valerie demanded. 19:42:15, Marcus read. "But in the main footage, that is when you are supposedly threatening Jasper." Valerie's eyes lit up. The reflection doesn't match the action. They digitally inserted figures into existing hallway footage, but forgot about reflective surfaces. Martha smiled grimly. "Sloppy work." They rushed it. "Get me everything you can about the security system at the venue," Valerie told Marcus. "Installation dates, maintenance records, hardware specs, and find me a top digital forensics expert, someone who can testify about video manipulation." Her phone buzzed. The SEC announced a formal investigation into both Helix and Sterling Pharma, citing serious concerns about corporate conduct and financial disclosures. "They are trying to drown us in regulatory paperwork," Marcus growled. "No," Valerie said, standing straighter. "They are giving us a chance to present evidence to federal authorities. Everything Martha documented about their financial crimes, it just became relevant to an official investigation." She moved to the tactical desk in the corner, spreading out papers. "The board meeting is in 3 hours. They expect me to come groveling, playing defense against Jasper's accusations." "But you are not going to do that," Martha said. It wasn't a question. "No, I am going to present our complete counter-offensive strategy. Full disclosure of Martha's evidence, technical proof the video was doctored, documentation of their coordinated media manipulation." Valerie's voice grew stronger with each point. They thought they could bury the truth under a crying child's testimony. They were wrong. Marcus was already typing on his tablet. "I will start calling friendly journalists. We need to line up coverage that can't be killed by Sterling influence." Good, Valerie nodded. "But I want something bigger. Something they can't edit or spin." She paused, then declared, "I want a live press conference tomorrow morning. No delays, no pre-recorded statements, just me speaking directly to the world." Martha touched her arm gently. "They will try to stop you. They might even try to hurt you." "They already tried that," Valerie replied, gesturing to the security feeds showing her vandalized home. "They threw everything they had at me last night. I broke down, yes, but I got back up. That is what they don't understand about people like us, Martha. We have been getting back up our whole lives, She turned to Marcus. Get me the biggest venue available. I want capacity for every major network. No press passes for anyone tied to Sterling Holdings. Full security sweep before we start. What about the board meeting? Marcus asked, concern crossing his face. I will give them their vote, Valerie said firmly. But first I will show them exactly what is coming. They can either stand with me while we expose decades of corruption, or they can try to replace me and watch their stock price evaporate when I release everything independently. She squared her shoulders, feeling strength flow back into her spine. The woman who had wept alone last night was still there, but she wasn't broken. She was transformed. Like steel through fire, she had emerged harder, sharper, more dangerous. Marcus, start calling venues. Martha, we need to organize your files for maximum impact. I want a clear, irrefutable timeline of their crimes. Her phone buzzed again. More reporters requesting comments. More investors expressing concern. Let them talk, she thought. Tomorrow she would speak her truth, and no amount of manufactured evidence could drown out her voice. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hastily assembled outdoor stage. Camera crews jostled for position, while hundreds of phones pointed upward like digital sunflowers. The air crackled with tension as Valerie Thorne emerged from the wings, her steps measured and deliberate. She wore a crisp white suit, a deliberate choice that highlighted the contrast with her wine-stained gown from the gala. Her heels clicked against the wooden platform as she approached the podium. Behind her, a massive screen hummed to life. Good morning, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. 3 days ago, a child poured champagne on my head, while his parents laughed. Today I am going to show you why that moment wasn't just about ruined silk. It was about exposed corruption. She gestured to the screen where the Sterling's doctored security footage began to play. This video was released yesterday, showing what they claim was me threatening Jasper Sterling. Watch carefully. The footage rolled in slow motion. Valerie directed attention to specific frames, her laser pointer highlighting key details. Notice the reflection in this brass door handle at timestamp 1942-15. While the main footage shows 2 people in heated confrontation, the reflection shows an empty hallway with only a cleaning cart. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Technical experts in white lab coats stepped forward, presenting their credentials before walking the audience through metadata analysis. The video file contains clear markers of editing software, explained Dr. Sarah Walsh, a digital forensics expert. Timestamp data shows manipulation occurring at 3 a.m., yesterday morning hours before its release. Valerie clicked to the next slide. But this isn't just about one doctored video. This is about decades of systematic abuse and corruption. She motioned off stage. Ms. Martha Higgins, please join me. Martha walked slowly to the podium, carrying her weathered satchel. The elderly woman's hands shook slightly as she withdrew a stack of notebooks. For 30 years I worked in the Sterling household. Martha's voice carried clearly across the hushed crowd. I documented everything I witnessed. She opened the first journal. March 15, 1995. Richard Sterling ordered me to falsify cleaning staff payroll, deducting hours from immigrant workers who couldn't protest. She continued reading entries, each more damning than the last. Recordings played over the speakers, Richard Sterling's voice crystal clear as he ordered evidence destroyed, threatened employees, and discussed illegal financial schemes. Valerie stepped forward again. What you are hearing isn't just workplace misconduct. It is organized criminal activity. She clicked through financial documents. These records show systematic wage theft exceeding $12 million. These memos detail intentional discrimination in hiring practices. And these emails she paused for effect prove the Sterlings planned to use our acquisition to hide embezzled funds. Gasps erupted as she displayed internal correspondence about the deal. They never intended to honor our contract. They needed it to cover missing money before their next audit. The evidence mounted methodically. Whistleblower documents appeared on screen, showing panicked messages between Sterling executives as they scrambled to destroy records. Security camera footage revealed teams shredding documents late into the night. But perhaps most disturbing, Valerie continued, is their response to being exposed. She pulled up photographs of her vandalized home, the racial slurs clearly visible. When they couldn't silence me with lawsuits, they resorted to hate crimes. When they couldn't bully me with financial pressure, they attacked my character with manufactured evidence. She faced the cameras directly. To my board members watching this is why I cannot be removed as CEO. Not because I cling to power, but because removing me would reward criminal intimidation. It would tell every corrupt dynasty that they can maintain control through fear and fabrication. The crowd had grown so silent you could hear the wind rustling through nearby trees. Phones remained raised, live streaming every word to millions watching globally. I stand here today not just as Valerie Thorne, CEO of Helix Biocorp, she declared. I stand as every person who has been told to stay quiet in the face of injustice. Every worker who has been cheated, every voice that has been silenced by power and privilege. Martha stepped forward again, placing a final stack of documents on the podium. These are copies of everything. All evidence has been provided to relevant authorities. As if on cue, dark vehicles with federal markings began moving in the distance, heading toward Sterling Pharma's headquarters. Valerie noticed them, but kept her focus on the crowd. The time for backroom deals and buried truths is over, she said firmly. Every document presented today is being made public. Every recording will be available for verification. Let other corporations take note. You cannot hide corruption behind manufactured outrage. You cannot bury justice under false accusations. She gathered her materials, standing tall. Thank you for your attention. There will be no questions at this time, as all evidence is now part of an active federal investigation. The reporters erupted in shouts and questions, but Valerie turned away from the podium. She helped Martha collect her journals, supporting the older woman's elbow as they walked off stage together. Behind them, the massive screen displayed a frozen frame of the doctored video, its fatal flaw highlighted for all to see. As they reached the wings, Marcus rushed forward with updates. The board just emailed. They are postponing the removal vote indefinitely, and our stock is already climbing. Valerie nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the federal vehicles now visible through gaps in the crowd. The wheels of justice were finally turning, grinding slowly but inexorably toward Sterling Pharma's gleaming corporate towers. Martha squeezed her arm. They thought they could break you, she whispered. They forgot something important, Valerie replied, watching the agents approach. Truth doesn't break. It only gets stronger under pressure. The glass doors of Sterling Pharma headquarters reflected the midday sun like a fortress of light. Inside, employees pressed against windows, watching federal vehicles surround the building. Agents in dark jackets moved with practiced precision, securing exits and establishing a perimeter. Richard Sterling stood in his top-floor office, yanking open desk drawers and stuffing papers into his briefcase. Sweat darkened his collar as his hands trembled, dropping documents across Italian marble floors. Security cameras captured his desperate movements as he grabbed his phone, barking orders. Shut everything down. Delete the servers. I don't care about protocols, do it now. His voice cracked with panic. The elevator dinged repeatedly as agents ascended floor by floor. Richard loosened his tie, glancing between his private elevator and the emergency stairs. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing closer. He made his choice, darting toward the executive elevator. FBI, stop where you are. The command boomed through his office door. Richard slammed the elevator button repeatedly, cursing under his breath. When the doors didn't open fast enough, he spun toward the emergency exit. He burst through the stairwell door, taking steps 2 at a time, his expensive shoes skidding on polished concrete. 6 floors down, he heard doors banging open above him. Voices echoed in the stairwell. Richard's breathing came in ragged gasps as he descended his briefcase, banging against the railing. Somewhere above, an agent radioed his position. On the ground floor, Richard shoved through the emergency exit into blinding sunlight. News cameras swung toward him. Reporters shouted questions. He sprinted across the plaza, briefcase flailing. Richard Sterling freeze. He ignored the commands, running faster. His tie whipped behind him as he headed for the underground parking garage. The first agent caught him at full sprint, tackling him from behind. Richard's feet left the ground. Time seemed to slow as he fell, his face meeting concrete, with a sickening crack. Blood spurted from his nose, staining his white collar crimson. The briefcase burst open, scattering papers across the plaza. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing his grimace as agents cuffed him. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting his humiliation live across the nation. Richard thrashed and cursed, blood dripping down his chin. "Get off me, do you know who I am?" he screamed. "Spitting red, Richard Sterling," the agent replied, calmly tightening the cuffs. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering." Across town, another team of agents surrounded the Sterling mansion. Cynthia Sterling stood in her marble foyer, still wearing designer sleepwear, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as federal vehicles rolled up her circular driveway. "They can't do this," she hissed furiously, deleting messages on her phone. "We are Sterlings." Agents knocked once, then broke down the carved mahogany door. Cynthia screamed as they entered, dropping her phone. She tried to crush it under her heel, but an agent swept it away with a gloved hand. Attempting to destroy evidence, he noted coldly securing the device in an evidence bag. "Add that to the charges." Cynthia fought as they cuffed her designer bracelets, clinking against steel. "My lawyer will destroy you, all of you. Your lawyer is under investigation too, Mrs. Sterling," the agent replied, leading her outside where news crews had gathered. Her silk robe fluttered in the wind as cameras documented her walk of shame to a waiting vehicle. Inside the mansion, investigators methodically swept each room. They found shredded documents, hidden safes, and a basement room full of servers. At Jasper's private school, counselors and child services representatives waited in the headmaster's office. Jasper slouched in an oversized leather chair, his usual smirk replaced by genuine fear, as they explained he would be removed from school for mandatory psychological evaluation and rehabilitation. "But I didn't do anything wrong," he protested weakly. "My parents said—" "Your parents," the counselor interrupted gently, "taught you some very harmful things. We are here to help you understand why they were wrong." Across the city, in a quiet cafe, Valerie sat with Martha. Legal documents spread between their coffee cups. Marcus hovered nearby, monitoring news updates on his tablet. "The protection order is ironclad," Valerie assured Martha, sliding papers forward. "You will have round-the-clock security, and the whistleblower fund will ensure you never have to worry about finances again." Martha's weathered hands trembled as she signed. All those years of keeping quiet, watching them hurt people. She wiped away tears. "I never thought I would see justice. You made it possible." Valerie squeezed her hand. "Your courage brought down an empire of corruption." Marcus rushed over, tablet extended. "You need to see this. Sterling Pharma stock is in freefall. Trading has been halted." They watched the numbers plummet in real time. Emergency notifications flashed. Board of directors calling emergency session. Major shareholders demanding total leadership change. Banking partners suspending credit lines. Valerie's phone buzzed with a message from her inside source. Board vote unanimous. Entire Sterling family removed from all positions. company to be restructured under new leadership. Martha stared at the updates, decades of tension finally leaving her shoulders. It is really over. Their power is broken, Valerie confirmed, reading more incoming reports. The Sterling dynasty ends today. Outside, sirens wailed as more federal vehicles raced through the city. News helicopters tracked their movement, broadcasting the dismantling of an empire in real time. The sun climbed higher, casting no shadows for the mighty to hide in. There would be no deals, no golden parachutes, no comfortable exits. Only consequences served cold and public exactly as they deserved. 1 year later, the morning sun painted golden stripes across the marble floors of the vacant bank building. As Valerie and Martha's footsteps echoed through the empty halls, the former financial headquarters with its soaring ceilings and classical columns stood in the heart of downtown, a perfect location for what Valerie envisioned. "It needs work," Martha said, running her hand along a dusty banister. "But it has good bones." "Like the best of us," Valerie replied, watching Martha take in the space. The older woman moved slowly, absorbing every detail of the grand staircase and ornate moldings. "What do you see when you look at this place?" Martha paused, her eyes distant. "I see possibility. All those years working for families like the Sterlings, we had to use back doors, service entrances. This place, it has a presence, dignity. Exactly." Valerie's heels clicked against the marble as she joined Martha at the window. Outside, morning traffic flowed past the city, already humming with energy. "That is why it is perfect for the Martha Higgins Justice Institute." Martha's hand flew to her mouth. "The what?" "Your name deserves to be on something that matters," Valerie said softly. "Something that will help others find their voice just like you found yours." Tears welled in Martha's eyes as Valerie outlined her vision. The Institute would provide legal support for whistleblowers, fund advocacy for marginalized workers, and create safe spaces for victims of systemic abuse to share their stories. The grand entrance hall would become a welcome center where no one would ever be forced to use a back door again. "The East Wing will house our legal clinic," Valerie explained, guiding Martha through the space. "Free representation for workers facing discrimination, retaliation, or unsafe conditions. The West Wing becomes our education and advocacy center, teaching people their rights, training future organizers, documenting oral histories." Martha wiped her eyes. "It is too much. It is. I am just one person who kept some records. You are so much more than that," Valerie insisted. "Your courage didn't just help take down the Sterlings. It showed others they can fight back too. This institute will make sure they have the support they need to do it." Marcus arrived with architects and contractors in tow tablets and blueprints ready. Valerie had pushed for rapid renovation, wanting the institute operational within months. As they reviewed plans, Martha watched in amazement as each space was assigned a purpose. The former bank vault would become a secure archive, protecting evidence and testimonies. "The funding is already secured," Marcus reported, pulling up spreadsheets. Helix's initial commitment sparked a wave of donations. People really connected with this fight. Indeed, supporters across the country had been moved by Martha's story. Retired domestic workers, former service staff, and elderly victims of workplace abuse saw themselves in her decades of silent documentation. Their donations, though often small, carried powerful messages of solidarity. "Look at this," Marcus said, showing them his tablet. Comments flooded the Institute's newly launched website. "Finally someone sees us. I kept records too. Now I know I am not alone. Thank you for giving us courage." Martha dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "I never imagined. That is exactly why this matters," Valerie said firmly. "Too many people think they have to suffer in silence. The Institute will show them otherwise." 1 week later, Valerie stood outside the same grand ballroom doors, where everything had changed. The polished brass handles felt different under her fingers now. No longer symbols of exclusion, but proof of transformation. She smoothed her shimmering emerald gown, took a deep breath, and nodded to the attendants. The doors swung open. 1,000 faces turned. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended. Then the crowd rose as one, erupting in thunderous applause that rolled through the ballroom like waves. Valerie walked forward, each step measured and dignified, just as she had that fateful night. But this time, instead of whispers and judgment, she moved through an ocean of support. "Look at her," someone whispered. "That is what grace looks like." The same crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, but their light felt warmer now. The same mosaic floors echoed under her heels, but they carried her toward triumph instead of humiliation. Faces both familiar and new beamed at her. Civil rights leaders, former domestic workers, corporate reformers, and young activists who had taken up her cause. Martha sat in the front row, elegant in deep purple silk, her eyes bright with pride. Beside her were Marcus Marisol and other Helix team members who had stood firm through the storm. They formed a wall of solidarity, their presence a reminder that true victory was never won alone. The Civil Rights Alliance chairman approached the podium. "Tonight we honor more than achievement. We celebrate the courage to stand against injustice, no matter its pedigree or power. We recognize a leader who turned personal humiliation into systemic transformation." A montage began playing on the giant screens. There was the viral video of Jasper's champagne attack, but now it played like a prelude to justice rather than an act of cruelty. The footage rolled forward. Valerie's calm announcement canceling the deal. Martha stepping forward with evidence. The federal raids on Sterling headquarters. Richard Sterling's arrest, the family's removal from power. Then came the brighter scenes. The Martha Higgins Justice Institute taking shape, whistleblowers finding protection workers claiming their dignity, and a new generation learning to fight systemic abuse. The ballroom watched in rapt attention as the story unfolded, many wiping away tears. When Valerie took the stage to accept her award, the applause swelled again. She stood at the podium, crystal trophy gleaming beside her, and surveyed the room that had witnessed both her lowest and highest moments. One night in this very room, she began her voice clear and strong. "A young boy thought he could pour wine on my head and face no consequences. His parents thought they could laugh because generations of privilege had taught them they were untouchable. They assumed power meant never having to answer for cruelty." She paused, letting the words settle. But true power isn't inherited. It isn't granted by wealth or status. True power comes from refusing to accept injustice, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever been told to stay quiet, to use the back door, to accept humiliation as their due. The screen showed Martha's decades of careful documentation, the meticulous records that had helped topple an empire. Change doesn't always announce itself with speeches and protests. Sometimes it grows in silence, in the careful notes of a domestic worker who refuses to let truth die. Sometimes it waits years, gathering strength until the moment comes to transform personal pain into collective justice. Valerie gestured to the Institute footage playing behind her. "We are building something bigger than revenge. We are creating spaces where dignity isn't a privilege but a right, where evidence matters more than influence, where no one has to spend decades waiting for justice because they lack power or connections." The cameras panned across faces in the crowd. Elderly workers who had donated their savings to the Institute. Young lawyers volunteering at the legal clinics. Tech workers building secure platforms for whistleblowers. This award doesn't mark an ending. It is a reminder that justice isn't a moment. It is a constant choice to stand firm, to protect truth, to lift others as we rise. The Sterlings thought they could break me with public humiliation. Instead, they helped launch a movement that will outlast their name. Martha dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief as the room erupted in fresh applause. The screen showed the Institute's growing impact. Hundreds of cases won, thousands of workers protected, millions reached through advocacy and education. After the ceremony, Valerie found Martha in a quiet corner of the ballroom. They stood together watching the celebration continue around them. "Did you ever imagine that night would lead to this?" Martha asked softly. Valerie shook her head. "I was just trying to keep my dignity. You were the one who showed me it could become something larger." "We both kept records," Martha smiled. "You of financial fraud, me of daily cruelties. Together they told the whole truth." They watched young activists eagerly networking with civil rights veterans, domestic workers chatting with corporate whistleblowers, lawyers exchanging cards with community organizers. The Institute had created new connections, new possibilities for change. "The champagne stains never came out of that blue dress," Valerie mused. "Good," Martha said firmly. "Some things shouldn't be erased. They should be transformed." The party continued around them, but Valerie knew it was time. She had faced her past in this room, had reclaimed its meaning, had turned shame into strength. Now she could leave on her own terms. She hugged Martha goodbye and made her way toward the exit. The same doors that had witnessed her humiliation now opened onto a future she had helped create. Valerie walked through them with her head high each step, echoing with earned authority. Behind her, the ballroom buzzed with energy, alive with the work of justice. But for Valerie, this chapter was complete. She had done more than survive shame. She had transformed it into lasting change. The doors closed softly behind her, marking not an ending, but a continuation of the work she had chosen, the power she had claimed, the future she would help build. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.